It's Thursday, it's the 19th of June. You're watching ARIRANG Korea's only global network. Live from Seoul, I'm Moon Gon-young. Now, the leaders of Korea and Kazakhstan have agreed to take their economic ties up a notch by expanding joint projects beyond the Central Asian nation's energy sector. During a summit meeting in Astana Thursday, President Park Geun-hye and her Kazakh counterpart Nursultan Nazarbayev checked up on 3 previously signed projects that are worth $10 billion. Now, Seoul asked for Astana's cooperation in speeding up initiatives to the construction of a coal thermal plant, a petrochemical complex, and mining off the Kazakh coast near the Caspian Sea. Now, President Park and Nazarbayev agreed to sign a technology sharing deal that could offer Korean firms the chance to participate in Kazakh railway and transportation infrastructure construction in the future. They also discussed working together in areas of medicine, forestry, and visa waivers. Trade volume between Korea and Kazakhstan reached $1.3 billion last year. Now, a senior U.S. official is hailing Chinese President Xi Jinping's upcoming visit to South Korea as greatly significant. At a forum in Washington Wednesday, Daniel Russell, Assistant Secretary of State for East Asian and Pacific Affairs, called Xi's trip an extraordinary milestone, adding that it should be helpful in promoting much-needed cooperation on North Korea. Well, this is the first time a senior U.S. official has commented on the Chinese leader's planned visit. Meanwhile, Japan's Kyodo News, citing unnamed diplomatic sources in Seoul, is reporting on this Thursday that Chinese President Xi Jinping will visit South Korea on July 3rd and 4th. Now, Xi plans to make his first visit to Seoul as president early next month, but his exact schedule has not been officially announced. Meanwhile, the push to restart stalled talks on North Korea's nuclear program continues. South Korea's top nuclear envoy Hwang Jun-guk sat down with his Russian counterpart in Moscow Wednesday, and Russia's foreign ministry says the two sides agreed that a political and diplomatic solution would be the best and only option in dealing with Pyongyang's nuclear program. The ministry added that the members of the six-party nuclear talks needed to work together to resume the multilateral dialogue based on the principles that were agreed on back in 2005. Hwang's trip to Russia this week comes after bilateral talks with his U.S. and Chinese counterparts earlier this month. A UN monitor is calling on the international community once again to step up efforts to deal with North Korea's continued human rights abuses. The UN Special Rapporteur Marzuki Darusman said Wednesday that recent findings by the Commission of Inquiry on Human Rights Abuses in North Korea show it's not just a political issue, but rather an international issue. Now, his inquiry team is calling for Pyongyang to be held accountable before the International Criminal Court to potentially prosecute leader Kim Jong-un and other powerful figures within the regime. A recent UN report showed that human rights abuses like rape, torture, and enslavement are very prevalent in North Korea. Elsewhere across the globe, the Iraqi government is losing ground at a rapid pace to Sunni militant groups that are storming across that country. Desperate for help, the government has officially called on the U.S. for backup in the form of airstrikes. Washington, meanwhile, is weighing its options. Our Kwon So-ah reports.
The U.S. is not quite sure yet how to deal with the worsening conflict in Iraq and has not yet replied to Iraq's formal request for U.S. air power to take on the militant group known as the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant. U.S. President Barack Obama has been mulling over how to deal with the crisis as the rebels have taken control of more territory in recent days, as well as Iraq's main oil refinery. On Wednesday, he told top congressional leaders that he does not need permission from lawmakers for any action in Iraq.
The president's been watching what we've been watching for over a year as the situation in Iraq continued to be undermined. And yet nothing has happened to try to reverse it.
Also on Wednesday at a Senate hearing, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff General Martin Dempsey explained the difficulties of launching an attack from the air. The top general, who has extensive experience commanding Iraqi troops, also expressed doubts that the U.S. has enough intelligence right now on potential targets, considering how quickly things have escalated in Iraq. Earlier this week, the U.S. deployed an aircraft carrier and missile ships in the Persian Gulf, leaving open the possibility of manned air or drone strikes on the Sunni militants. Kwon So-ah, ARIRANG News.
Adios Españoles and Viva Chile. As I mentioned on Wednesday, 2 wins, or on the flip side, 2 losses in the group stage means you're certain to keep going or start packing your bags. This was the case in Group B, as the 2 teams, the Netherlands and Chile, won their 2 games entering the knockout round. Spain, along with Australia, will be flying home after they play each other next week in a rather meaningless final group game. The Chile side was just too strong for the defending champions, making Spain look dull, ordinary, in a comfortable 2-0 win in Rio. First half goals from Eduardo Vargas, who plays in Spain's La Liga for Valencia, and Charles Aranguiz put Chile in control, and they never looked in danger of losing their lead. Only 2 countries have ever won back-to-back World Cups, Italy all the way back in the 1930s, and Brazil for the 1958 and 62 World Cups. It was a fierce game in the other Group B match, with the Netherlands beating Australia 3-2 in a pulsating match. Robin van Persie and Arjen Robben both scored in their second straight game. In Group A, Croatia cruised past Cameroon 4-0, but remained in 3rd place in the group behind Brazil and Mexico. The African team are eliminated. With that said, let's take a look at where the teams stand in their groups a week after the World Cup kicked off last Thursday. Now, this year's World Cup is a goal fest. We're seeing many more goals than we have seen in the World Cups gone by. An average of 3 goals have been scored per game so far, raising the bar for the world's top strikers to win the Golden Boot in Brazil. Now, the current leaders are tied at 3 goals each. Those are Germany's Thomas Müller, who scored a hat-trick in the first match against Portugal, and Netherlands' Robin van Persie and Arjen Robben. The Dutch squad have scored the most goals so far at 8, and Chile's next with 5. And this Brazuca, the official match ball, may just be that reason. Our Kim Min-ji tells us more about the most advanced soccer ball yet.
In Team Korea's first match at the Brazil World Cup against Russia, forward Lee Geun-hye connected on a long-range goal. The ball seemed to be in the grasp of the Russian goalkeeper, but bounced off his hands and found its way into the net. The Brazuca, the official match ball of the 2014 World Cup, has been pointed to as a possible reason behind the Russian player's miscue. It has deeper and longer seams which contribute to its aerodynamics. Its unique surface also makes it less air-resistant. Therefore, offensive players will find it easier to roll the ball with greater speed and accuracy, while making it harder for goalkeepers to snare.
Simply put, it is like a volleyball. It will be hard to catch if the goalkeeper doesn't have a sensitive reaction to the ball.
To prepare for the Brazuca, Team Korea used a smaller ball during training.
I was able to enhance my concentration by using a smaller ball during training sessions. As I have to dive for the ball faster, it requires more agility.
The Brazuca has made the Brazil World Cup a high-scoring affair. There's been an average of 3 goals per match so far, a figure not seen in more than 40 years at a World Cup tournament. Faster and stronger, the Brazuca may indeed be a deciding factor in future matches. Kim Min-ji, ARIRANG News.
And here's a look at today's games. First to kick off is the top two in Group C, Colombia and Côte d'Ivoire. Then comes the matches these teams will fight to win. The bottom two of Group C and D. That'll be 1, 4, and 7 a.m. on a Friday morning here in Korea. Let's hope the players give us another day to remember with goals, and some more goals. This has been Song Ji-sung with the updates on the World Cup.
Now, the U.S. Federal Reserve has come out with a relatively upbeat assessment of the U.S. economy, well, in the long term at least. The Fed says the economy is showing signs of strength after a weak first quarter, but it'll still cut its growth outlook for this year. Here's our Connie Lee.
The U.S. Federal Reserve has given a positive outlook for the economy this year, even though the economic growth forecast was slashed. From a projection of 2.9% in March, growth has been cut to between 2.1 and 2.3%. This is the latest from the two-day meeting of the Federal Reserve's policymakers. At a press conference on Wednesday, Fed Chair Janet Yellen, however, expressed the U.S. economy is rebounding and said interest rates, currently near zero, could begin to rise sometime next year. If this happens, it'll be the first rate hike since 2006. The exact timing, though, apparently depends.
There is no mechanical formula whatsoever for what a considerable time means. The answer as to what it means is it depends. It depends on how the economy progresses.
And as widely expected, the Fed cut its monthly bond purchases by another $10 billion to $35 billion, which shows confidence of a recovering economy. The Fed, in the meantime, will keep a watch on economic stability.
Today, Yellen came out and said that volatility may be too low, and we agree. Bond market volatility is very low, the stock market volatility is very low. So any sudden spike or in volatility could cause interest rates to rise pretty sharply.
Growth projections for 2015 and 2016 have been maintained, and Fed officials do forecast a drop in unemployment. Connie Lee, ARIRANG News.
Now, lawmakers are taking a closer look at President Park Geun-hye's three-year economic innovation plan on the second day of a plenary hearing on this Thursday here in Korea. Now, ruling Saenuri Party lawmakers have been putting a premium on deregulation, saying it's necessary to stimulate the economy and prop up the slumping real estate market. Well, Finance Minister Hyun Suk said that the government was looking into easing restrictions on home loans that were put into effect when household debt was rising at alarming levels. Lawmakers from the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy had a word of warning, though, saying success would be determined not by how much the economy grows, but by how much people's livelihoods improve. Well, it's another upgrade for smartphone users in Korea who already enjoy one of the fastest wireless networks in the world. SK Telecom, Korea's biggest mobile operator, has announced it has commercialized an LTE advanced service with a speed of 225 megabits per second. Now, that's 3 times faster than current LTE speeds and means a 1 gigabyte movie can be downloaded to our smartphone in just 37 seconds. Other mobile carriers in the nation say they will follow SK's lead in the coming days. Samsung Electronics unveiled on Wednesday an upgraded model of its Galaxy S5 that is specifically optimized for the new LTE technology. LG and Pantech plan to introduce smartphones compatible with the technology starting next month. So the explosion in the number of consumers using smartphones means retailers and online shopping malls cannot afford to miss out on the growing opportunities for mobile revenue. Our Kim Ji-yeon takes a look.
Korean consumers are increasingly turning to their smartphones to go shopping. They shop in their spare time, during working hours, and on public transportation. Like 27-year-old Kim Eun-hye, who says she has been shopping through her smartphone 5 days a week for the past 6 months.
I use mobile shopping day and night when I'm in the subway going to and from work. Because I spend most of my day working, I don't have the time to go shopping in the traditional way. I buy the necessities, and these days I'm shopping for summer clothes. It's easy and takes less than 5 minutes to buy something.
And Kim is hardly alone. GS Shop, one of Korea's largest online shopping malls, says the number of transactions made on its mobile application surpassed the number of those made through personal computers for the first time ever last month. 11th Street says more than 30% of its total sales comes from mobile shopping, up 10 percentage points from last year. The changing landscape has companies scrambling to come up with new ways to attract customers. 11th Street debuted a service in May that provides data for smartphone users when they window shop on the mobile platform. GS Shop has introduced a customer service menu that makes it easier for users to get questions answered. Kim Jeon, ARIRANG News.
When the latest news meets the latest business stories, we give you a bigger and better picture of the world. Business Today with Moon Gon-young. Every weekday, only on ARIRANG.
Now, Samsung and Apple have a new competitor in the cutthroat global smartphone market, none other than online retail giant Amazon. Long waved off as nothing more than a rumor, Amazon CEO Jeff Bezos on Wednesday unveiled the Fire Phone at an event in Seattle. Now, Amazon's device has some very interesting features that Samsung and Apple phones do not have. For instance, the phone's Firefly feature lets users scan barcodes and buy products with the touch of a button so long as they're available on Amazon's website. The Fire Phone is also capable of displaying images in 3D thanks to 4 specialized cameras that track a person's head movements. And the Fire Phone will be released on July 25th. Meanwhile, China is rigorously developing its shale gas industry with the goal of producing up to 100 billion cubic meters of natural gas by 2020. Beijing's drive is part of efforts to improve its air quality and shift its power generation towards cleaner burning natural gas. Now, China has the world's biggest potential reserves of natural gas in shale rock, twice as much as the shale leader, U.S. Pundits say that if the shale gas industry takes hold in China, it could actually hurt Korea's exports of petrochemical products, of which more than half heads to Asia's largest economy. Back here in this country, the nation's largest ever data breach earlier this year was far from an isolated incident. Since the Personal Information Protection Act went into effect in September of 2011, the Ministry of Security and Public Administration says there have been 42 cases in which personal data was leaked, which resulted in the exposure of nearly 119 million pieces of information. Now, much of that came in January this year when hackers gained access to some 80 million pieces of customer data from the nation's 3 major credit card firms. But the report shows that the Korean Medical Association, Hyundai Motors, and even the Labor Ministry have also been breached in the past few years. A high salary, good benefits, and job security probably top your list if you're a young job seeker just out of school. Well, many of the jobs that meet these requirements just so happen to be in the finance sector. So the latest trend of downsizing in the nation's financial institutions cannot be good news, especially taking into account the more than bleak job market here in Korea and all across the globe. Let's take a closer look. Dr. Kim Byung-ju joins me live in the studio. Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon.
Now, there is a prominent trend of downsizing in the nation's financial sector.
Right.
So first, how serious is the situation?
Pretty significant here, at least the trend itself. They're talking about Korean brokerage houses here for the last 3 years, cutting about 20%, 1 out of 5 stock analyst jobs here, and that's pretty shocking. But let's bring up the number, the illustration that we have prepared here that will tell us better stories here. This is just like within a year period of time from year 2012 to year 2013. As you can see here, in banks, within just a year time, they reduced about 1.5% of their workforce, and the security companies 6% and mutual savings 8%. Of course, you see the insurance side about 3% jump there, but the thing is, this year we're expecting drop as well. So overall, we have to say the financial sector downsizing itself is a trend that seems to be in place that will continue for quite some time.
Let's try taking a look at some specific financial companies here. Now, how are they carrying out their restructuring procedures?
We have prepared a list of companies that are undertaking this kind of restructuring efforts. Let's bring it up on the screen here, and let's take a look here. The overall here, we have about 12 different companies listed up here, and 3 of them are life insurance companies, and then 2 banks, foreign brand banks here, and 7 securities companies, brokerage houses, one could call here. And these kind of changes are all undertaking, as you can see from the screen, sometime from late last year until even like last month. So this is definitely ongoing. And overall, as you can see, and as I've mentioned before, the biggest impact seems to be being felt on the securities company's side. But overall, they're saying even the banks, you can be rest assured that this kind of restructuring will not affect them. Indeed, they're expecting restructuring overall trend affecting the financial industries, wherever your subsector would be. So overall, this is a very important trend that we are witnessing at this point.
Now, restructuring is really not uncommon in the business world. In fact, it's a common reality, if you will. But these restructuring in the financial sector here in Korea is causing concerns because it directly relates to quality jobs, right?
Right, indeed. When we say quality jobs, permanent jobs, and perhaps protected jobs and highly paid jobs here. And some interesting numbers we have. Overall, what we are saying is last month, May, here in Korea, we saw about reduction of total number of about 9,000 jobs in the financial sector altogether. But the thing is, actually in that, there have been some considerable number of decrease of the full-time jobs. In terms of full-time jobs, we lost about 20,000 last month alone. And when we say the net loss is 9,000, that means about 11,000 part-time jobs being created here. So while a large number of permanent full-time jobs are being lost, part-time jobs are being created to make up for it, meaning that people in the financial sector, they're facing greater instability in terms of their jobs and the shorter hours and then less pay. And what's even more significant is this kind of, the changes are affecting young professionals in their 30s and 40s who we are talking about here. And, we have to keep in mind the financial sector had been a sector that was pretty hot for young graduates, for college graduates and so on, for their higher pay and, fancy prospect for their long-term career. But looks like that picture, at least for now, seems to be changing for young professionals.
Right. Now, a bigger challenge to me is that this trend, a similar trend is seen, is not limited to the finance sector. I mean, we see it in the IT industry, construction, and petrochemical industries as well. Right,
indeed. So this story itself is not limited to the financial sector here. And as you mentioned, IT industry, for instance, KT, Korea Telecom, old name Korea Telecom, but we call it KT these days, one of the giants in the mobile telecom business here. Overall, they're saying they're saving now like 700 billion won per year as a result of this reduction in workforce. And what they did was last April, they cut 8,000 jobs in the form of early retirement. And overall, they're saying this will save them big time, as I said before. But the thing is that many of these jobs, 8,000 jobs being lost, they're also at a relatively younger age. And petrochemicals, their profit in refinery businesses are being reduced here. And because of the recent rise of the oil price, they're saying, well, there might be some temporary relief. But overall, the trend in the petrochemical overall seems to be kind of downwards as well. GS Caltex last month reduced about 1/6 of the number of their top executives, and S-Oil also reduced their number of people, and then they're undertaking big-time restructuring in terms of making their overall organization smaller. And as you mentioned, construction business, of course, that's perennially downsizing for the past several years, and then that seems to be kind of picking up the pace as well. So overall, yes, indeed, it's not only financial sector in Korea that's seeing this kind of restructuring and downsizing trend, but also other sectors that have been facing kind of like a downward slope in terms of their business cycle as well. So this is a very telling story for all of us.
Right. So all in all, the economy needs to pick up in the bigger picture in order for these companies to not slash or cut their employees, and thus creating more jobs for young job seekers.
Right. And for financial sector, though, because the technology is replacing the jobs, even if the cycle picks up, for financial sector at least, we don't expect much of a job recovery trend. So that's another point to be added.
All right. Well, something that we need to see improvement in. All right, Dr. Kim Byung-ju, thank you so much for today.
Thank you.
And that's your business today on this Thursday. Thank you for watching, and do join us again at 6 p.m. Korea time on Early Edition at 6.